You deserve a photo shoot every hour. It's your hour. Camera, lights, flash, click.
Tick, strike up, pose.
Oh, swag, drippy, click, strike up, pose.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Her Hour Takeover, in which we are celebrating Pride Month 2021. My name is Thomas Hastings. I am the Deputy Chief of Mission at the United States Embassy here in Harare, Zimbabwe, and I am very pleased to welcome to the Embassy Jordan and Vera, our usual hosts of the show. But today we are turning the tables, and I will be asking the questions and interviewing them about topics related to the LGBTI community in Zimbabwe and LGBTI rights. Jordan, Vera, thank you for being here. Welcome.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for switching it up on us.
So June is Pride Month. This is a month that many nations around the world increasingly recognize. It is a time to celebrate the LGBTI community, to recognize the accomplishments of LGBTI individuals, but also to recognize that LGBTI rights are still not enjoyed in many countries in the world. And so to lend our support to their struggle for equality and a full recognition of their human rights. So let me ask first, what does Pride Month mean to you as influencers and as Zimbabweans?
Influencer, does my bank account say that? I'm joking.
Pride Month to me, well, in a Zimbabwean context, I feel like it's kind of non-existent. When I really started doing research into what happens in Pride Month in different countries, specifically looking at America and the UK, people have parades and it looks like so much fun. And I'm like, I would love to participate in something like that. But in Zim, it's literally smaller circles and smaller intimate events. And I think it's still great that given, the climate that we're in Zimbabwe, especially when it comes to the LGBTQA plus community, that it's very difficult to publicly express anything. And I think it's great that we still manage to have these safe spaces for people to celebrate Pride Month. But I just feel like we need to get to a point where we can have those parades and we can have radio interviews and have people just making it louder and bigger and radio ads and TV ads and things like that. So I just think that right now it's a great effort. But I think, for lack of a better way to put it, so I don't sound like I'm really being judgmental or too analytical.
Judge them, girl. Judge
but
them.
yeah, I think it's great. We have smaller organizations that do smaller events and fun gatherings and everything. But I just feel like it could be bigger, it could be greater. And I think, I can't wait for that moment to happen.
Right,
Okay.
Yeah.
right. Okay, well, for me, I think Pride Month means to me, what does that mean to me? My words are already being swallowed, guys. 2 seconds in. It's called hunger. I'm joking. So Pride Month to me means it's basically just a time for us to celebrate the fact that there are diverse identities that exist outside of the binary. And when I say the binary, I mean just normalcy. If you fit into the idea of being normal and if you are recognized by your government or by your, official documents, you can socialize normally without it being a problem. I think that's what we would classify as being normal or fitting into the bracket of normalcy. And so for me, I think Pride is just that idea of celebrating and being proud of the fact that regardless of how much is pinned against people of the LGBTQA plus community like myself, there's still resilience. There's still, existing beyond those confines. There's still so much to be happy about, so much to be proud about. We're not just an oppressed group. We're a group of people who have a lot to show, a lot of stories to tell, a lot of things to be happy about, like the fact that we're alive. I'm so grateful to be alive, to be able to sit here. Because I'm sure not only myself, but there are a lot of LGBTQI plus persons out there who have probably more than once or on several occasions have come into contact with the idea of, what am I doing here? What is this life? If I'm constantly going to be questioned on my identity, am I constantly going to be, wondering how I fit in here, that's that's a lot. That's heavy.
Yeah.
And so just to be able to say, I'm here today, I'm proud of who I am, out or not out, I am very proud of who I am, you know. That's something to be proud of, you know.
That's very important.
Right.
Let me just focus for a moment on this term. So I said LGBTI, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex. I think
Queer.
you guys are saying you're adding the Q and the A and
plus.
the plus.
Everything else.
Why this term seems to evolve frequently, and it doesn't seem to have sort of settled on one term. Why does the term keep changing? And tell me why you choose the term that you use and why that's the one that you choose to use.
You go first.
I don't know. I think there's this idea of inclusivity. I think within the idea of inclusivity, it never ends, you know, until we feel like everyone can be included. You know, we have to continue extending it until everyone feels they're included. So when we say it started off as LGBT, you know, that was something that we all knew for a really long time. But that's in its own right could be seen as exclusive to lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or gay people, you know. So there's the QIA. I say LGBTQIA plus, which is lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender or transsexual, intersex, queer or questioning, asexual or agender. And then plus,
For all
plus,
the
plus,
others.
plus, plus, plus. Remembering the plus to show that we do still stand in solidarity with all the people who we may not be mentioning, but I think they can fit into that LGBTQIA because it's queer or questioning or intersex, agender, asexual.
Yeah.
You know, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet, and you've already used 7 of them. So I think the plus plays an important role.
Yes, claiming that space.
Yeah, no,
Right.
that's good.
I actually have a friend of mine who's a member of the LGBTQA plus community, and he was like to me, he's like, all he says is he just calls it the alphabet community. I was like, I like that. It's called the alphabet. Simple. Everyone is covered in there.
Right.
So you have had a program called the Influence series. So I want to talk about this idea of influence and what does influence mean in the context of I'm sorry, I'm used to saying LGBTI, so I'm just going to keep saying
Okay,
LGBTI.
that's fine.
What does influence mean in the context of the LGBTI community in Zimbabwe and their struggle for equality? Who needs to be influenced and who can do that influencing?
As an ally of the community, I really think it's important for, people. Feel like, musicians especially have a really huge role to play. Creatives have a very big role to play in influencing people's ideology of the LGBTQA plus community. I feel the other day I was listening to, I'm a fan of dancehall music. And the other day I was actively listening to the lyrics. And 90% of my favorite songs have something very homophobic in them.
Right.
And I was like, I clearly need to stop listening
What's your favorite?
what do you call it? What's the song? I can't remember it now, but when I remember, I'll put it in the description below so you guys can listen to the lyrics. Like, I didn't realize until I was consciously listening. I was like, oh my gosh, did he actually actively say this in a song? And this is something that people then listen to and they start singing it and it starts manifesting in your brain. Right. And then you grow up having these ideologies and then you start behaving in certain manners. Yeah. So as a creative myself, I just feel like creatives play a very big role in influencing how the general populace perceives certain people, certain things, certain ideas. And then obviously policymakers, I feel like the people that you're fighting against or the people you're trying to get to change their policies, those are the important people that you need to, influence. Those are the opinions you need to change so that active change can actually happen. It's the same thing that you see with, gender issues where women are like, no, only women can be feminists. Well, honey, if the men who are oppressing you aren't on your side, nothing is going to be accomplished. You're just going to be, constantly fighting each other. So I think it's the same thing with the community is that we need to also, influencers have to then influence those who are oppressing the community, those who have negative opinions of them, and then get them to kind of just realize that we're just all people and like, get over it.
Right. Do
not
you mind
that
repeating the question? Sorry.
So,
I got so lost in what Vera was saying.
Just a question about the idea of influence and who needs to be influenced and who is able to do that influence, to have that influence.
I think I agree with Vera. I think it's people who are policyholders, people who actually make the important decisions that, it's always great to have a big following of people who support ideals and beliefs. But if it's not the actual people who are making the laws and the people who influence the well-being of people that are influenced by laws and, decisions in a higher level, then to a certain extent it can be pointless. I think, unfortunately, in a country like Zimbabwe, we can always preach the idea of, no, it's the people, but we've all seen by, lived experience that it's not the people who make the decisions, it is the people in power, in positions of power. So I think in this setting, the context that we live in, definitely it is the people who make decisions, who have that power, policy holding power, right?
And so taking that forward, you used the word ally a few minutes ago. What is the role of allies? And I'll ask it two ways. What is the role of allies within Zimbabwe? But also, what is the role of outsiders? I represent a foreign government here. As you say, Pride Month is sort of an international phenomenon that is more actively celebrated outside of Zimbabwe than in Zimbabwe. How can that have a positive influence?
I think allies just play the role of strength in numbers. I think it's more of a supportive role of just offering support in terms of, it can be in terms of adding your voice. It can be like you actually, monetary support. It can be physical support. I just really feel like it's more of a supportive role. I have seen times where like being an ally can turn out to be quite toxic, where like the allies then overtake the movement and then make it about them, and then they're no longer playing the ally role. But I just feel like, especially in a Zimbabwean context, I'll give a really great example with what happened last year with the Zimbabwe Lives Matter movement. When we had so many people from other countries joining in and using the hashtag, it had more of a push to it. Like, they weren't saying that, okay, we're going to put our own. No, they were like, we got you, we'll hashtag it and we're going to join in with whatever you're talking about. And this happens with any hashtag or any movement that happens internationally, the Me Too movement. You'll find that you have other people that join in and offer that support. And when you see these large numbers, so many people actively involved in fighting for something or, agreeing with something, then I feel like it has more of an impact. And at the end of the day, we're closer to some sort of a change and getting more people to actively ask, what is this about? How do I get involved? I want to try and understand this better and things like that. So I think it's definitely more of a supportive role. And just adding, I'm a strong believer of strength in numbers. Like the more, the merrier, as long as we're all singing the same tune.
Right. I don't know. I've always said that allies are not part of the LGBTQA plus community, but only there to support the community. I think we must not conflate the idea of lived experience with supporting people with the lived experience. You cannot sit and say, I'm part of a community when you don't face the challenges, trials and tribulations of that community. When you get to put down your allyship and go to sleep and not have to deal with that anymore. You get to put it on a shelf, put it in a locker or whatever. Unfortunately, that is not what the community has to experience or gets to experience. So for me, I think allyship is basically understanding your role as someone with a position of privilege, understanding that you are someone who is, being able to exist or socialize in a context of normalcy, like we said at the beginning. And with that position, with that power, if you choose to be an ally, it's you taking on I won't say the burden, but the task of going into the spaces and the capacities that you exist in and using your power in those spaces to enlighten people in your spaces, that these people exist outside of your scope of understanding. There's so much more to life than the small 5 people that you see in your office space or in your works at home or
Yeah.
when you go to the grocery store. There's so much more to the world than that. And I think so allyship is taking your understanding and spearheading the idea that there's so much more to life. And you've seen it.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, it's an idea that I came up with in my head when I was, sitting in my kitchen chopping up onions. No, I've seen people who exist differently than myself. And I'm here to let you know that these are still people. These are still human beings with human experiences. There was I love to bring this up. It's my favorite thing to bring up this week. And there was recently a 3-part essay that was released by an ally of the LGBTQA+ or the trans community specifically. And this essay, 3-part essay, brought up a lot of transphobia because it was basically written by someone who made the remarks that trans women are not women, they're trans women, And so it caused a whole lot of tension.
Yeah.
It caused a whole lot of people to feel like they could discuss the validity of trans women's identities. Who is a woman? What is a woman? What makes a woman? What constitutes someone being identified as a woman? And so, yeah, I just think, just taking from that story, I think the problem in that is that there was a community that you don't belong to telling you that we have a problem with what you're saying.
Yeah.
It doesn't sit right with us, and it is a form of transphobia or something like that. And so as an ally, I believe it is your job to listen to the people who are living this experience and not thinking that you know better. It's not, you can't do that because that's gaslighting. That's putting yourself in a position of, thinking that you know more than someone who lives it, experiences it, is it, So I think allyship is listening to the people, the communities that you claim to champion for, not just doing it for social currency, not just doing it because it looks good. Oh, I'm a Democrat, or I'm a liberal thinking person, so I believe in. No, do the work, put in the hours. Don't just say things. It's more than just words. It's action. Action. So that's what I believe. It's being an ally is an action. It's a verb. It's not, it's not something that it's not a badge way. It's
not
an
for your
action.
description on Twitter.
Right. Do the work. Right.
So let me ask another question. There's an argument that is often used in Africa that homosexuality is somehow something that was imported from the West. It came with colonialism, it came with imperialism, and as a result, it's not truly African, and there's something African about rejecting the LGBTQI community. How do you respond to that argument?
Said while wearing my imported clothing with my imported English language. Let's start there. Right. I don't know. Go ahead. That's all I want to say right now.
I completely disagree with that notion. I feel, and this is going out to all the people who are Christians, because I know Christians will be like, I'm a Christian, I'm a strong believer in Christianity. And I feel like what has happened in Africa, which is quite unfortunate, is we've confused what our culture and our tradition is with what religion introduced to us. So I honestly feel, first of all, I haven't done the research, but personally, I just feel like no one on this earth in Africa has lived long enough to tell us whether homosexuality or members of the LGBTQA+ community existed before. I had a conversation with someone some time ago, and we were talking about how, like in the African culture, you believe that someone can be possessed by a spirit, and how like a male spirit can possess a female, body, or a female spirit can like inhabit a male body, and that spirit can then speak through that person, and that person can present in a certain way. And I was like, technically, we can also use this argument and be like, well, how do we know that that person was really possessed? And maybe they were just, trans, and like use that as an excuse. So I just really feel like I don't think it's a Western idea. I think it's just an excuse that we use because we don't want to accept something that we think is so terrible. We don't want to justify it, like if I can put it that way. And I just feel like there's so much that's happened in our culture. There's so many parts of our culture that exist that we've lost touch with, because of colonialization, Christianity, even within Africa, like all of the moving around and the trade and like the learning of experiences and everything, that we just don't know anything for sure. And I just feel like it's not something that would have just popped up now. It's not like COVID. Being a part of the community isn't something that you just wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, it just happened yesterday. Like it's something that's existed for a long period of time. And we just don't want to accept it as Africans because we've been preconditioned to think that it's such a terrible thing. And the funny thing is that when we get to a point of just accepting that this is something that's very normal and it's just a part of life, we're going to get to a point where a lot of people are going to be taking back these statements. And now everyone's going to be like, yeah, well, this does make sense and blah, blah, blah. So I just think that it's just an excuse to not accept something that people are still trying to so actively fight or go against, if that makes sense.
Right. I don't know, in our own Zimbabwe, right here where we are, is this Zimbabwean soil? No. But I mean, outside of these walls, there are cave paintings actually of like a man-on-man encounter. They were like drawn, painted, I guess, with a finger, whatever they used. That's the first recorded, or it's something that people use always as a reference of a record in history, something that, it can't be new.
Yeah.
It's not something that's new. We paint on canvases now, paper, if you've ever heard of that. So yeah, I think that's a perfect example. I think it's something that's always existed. Humans have been humaning long before other humans came and taught us how to human. So I will just put that on the table. We've been doing this. It's nothing is new under the sun. Maybe colonial ideas, maybe things like that, those are, I don't know. I think in my opinion, it's just, we want so badly to divorce ourselves from things that we aren't willing to associate with because of our own ideals, also because of like wanting to be oppressive, wanting to be segregational. I think being segregational is more not an African thing. When we think about things like Hunu, we think of Ubuntu. Those are terms that mean togetherness, mean family, mean not family, but like community. So, in my opinion, togetherness is more an African trait than segregation. So if you are standing in your position and saying, this is un-African, we don't accept you you are perpetuating oppression. You are now becoming the colonizer, in a sense. You are colonizing spaces and saying, this only belongs to us, So to me, it's a learned behavior. It's your definitely. Oppression is more of an import than something that's normal, like existing.
True.
I have two questions about change, and I'll give you the spoiler. One's about how have things changed, and one is about how are things going to change.
Okay.
But on the how have things changed, Zimbabwe actually internationally has had a reputation of being one of the most intolerant countries for the LGBTI community, and a lot of it came from former President Mugabe.
Right.
And he, in 1995,
Rest
made
your soul.
these comments about how, as he said, homosexuals are worse than pigs and dogs.
Right.
And this received international attention. I remember I wasn't working for the government or working on foreign policy at all, but I remember hearing that, and I think it really made an impression for people that, wow, there's a leader who is really
outright
taking a very intolerant line. Have things, that was 26 years ago. Have things improved? Have things changed? And if so, why?
I'll say yes and no, but this is just speaking from experiences that people have told me, because like I'm not a part of the community, so I can't really speak like directly on it. But I think in terms of like the new dispensation, I feel like they opt not to be very vocal about it. And just because they're not being vocal about it doesn't mean that they have different opinions. I think they're just more strategic about how they air out their views on certain things because they know how it looks on the international platform. I know like certain spaces, like girls used to be raided a lot. And, it was like, impromptu raids that just used to happen. I know with some of the workshops that I did last year and the year before, a lot of people used to complain and say, like, yo, like, before us just going to certain spaces, like it was not a thing you would think of. I remember going out to certain clubs, and if you saw like gay people or lesbians, you'd be like, oh my God, like, do they know what's happening here? But like nowadays, like there's certain spots, like there's this one club that became very notorious for kind of being like an unofficial LGBTQA plus bar that was in a location that just didn't really seem like a location that a bar like that would be. But, and that's where you'd expect like, police to come and raid if they were going to raid and things like that. So I just feel like I think there's a reason behind it. I think there's no reason, like our government is very strategic with a lot of things that they do. I don't think that, like the policies have not changed, the rules have not changed, but I just feel like they are less vocal about it because they have ulterior motives. It's not because they're out here like, no, we're allies now, waving the flag. And nah, that's not happening.
Because they would like for you to lift their sanctions. So, do what you gotta do to get the sanctions lifted. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
Well, I don't know. I think it's better. It's definitely better. I think I'll just speak from my own experience. I have had the privilege of being on national radio as myself, speaking as an openly trans person, and so for me, in situations like that in the past, if you were on air, they would come while you're still on air, raid the studio and take you. But that never happened to me. I'm so lucky they didn't follow me home. Well, not that I know of. So yeah, they didn't follow me home. They didn't do anything. They didn't do anything like that. But if you want to follow me home, I live at, what's the address? What's the address here? Right. So yeah, I think it's a lot better. It's a lot better, but it's also still like, we still aren't recognized by our law. We still can't access services. The only thing that they recognize us for is HIV and AIDS.
Yeah.
And that's so problematic, and we're so much more than HIV and AIDS, All the programming is HIV and AIDS or health. When there's so much more to our community than that, So yeah. I think, but even just the provision of something like healthcare is a step forward, I think. Yeah. Right.
So I think, sorry, just to add on to what you're saying, I think this also comes back to what you're saying about being an ally, that like it has to be like more active than that. I think, like what you're saying is that, yes, the health thing helps, but I just feel like there's so many other policies that just need to change that wouldn't really affect them in any way. It won't like break their financial bank for them to change certain policies. Like, I feel like there's certain things that can just simply change, like being able, if you're a trans person and just being able to go and change your ID.
Right. How is that hurting you?
Right. You pay for it anyway. You go with your $10 and you pay. Right. So I don't understand how that's a cost to the government, like to have that whole process. Even in terms of like sensitizing the police, you have people who want to report certain cases and you have like policemen standing there and they're just like, they're so insensitive to like the community and things like that. And you're just like, guys, like, again.
So
like,
your rape case now becomes an LGBTQA plus case.
Right. And then like even in the whole.
I didn't come here for that, right?
Yeah, so no.
So let's talk about changes going forward then. And when I look at my own country, in the past 20 years.
Sorry, which country is that?
This is the United States of America.
Just making sure.
It's actually an area where social norms have changed very quickly. I mean, it's still a process of years, but compared to how these things often go. So as recently as 2003, same-sex marriage was illegal everywhere in the United States.
Right.
2004, the first state, Massachusetts, made it legal. And because we have 50 states and certain government functions are controlled by the states, it was state by state. And then more and more and more. So that you had a situation by 2015 in which in most of the country it was legal and yet still illegal in some states. And then the Supreme Court in 2015 said, no, it is against the Constitution to prohibit members of the same gender from getting married. And that's 11 years. And that's actually very fast. I mean, it didn't necessarily feel fast to friends of mine who were, living unofficially together and waiting until it was legal in their state. But really, in the grand scheme of things, that's a rapid transition. So my question for you is, what is your vision of the LGBTI situation in Zimbabwe 15 or 20 years from now, in 2035, 2040? What do you think is achievable?
If the apocalypse doesn't come, I don't know. Do you want to go first?
You keep, I feel like so you can buffer. Jordan does this all the time. Okay, no, it's fine.
So that my internet can
Your
load.
internet connection is loading. Okay, just from number one, the issue of someone changing their gender on like things like driver's license and their ID, their passports. I think that's like so petty. Can we just let that happen? Government.
If you're listening.
You may never
I know you're listening because you want your sanctions lifted.
And then the second thing, I think definitely like the issue to do with marriage. I think that's just like not an issue anymore. I think we also just need to get over that. I think also in terms of the last thing I'll say, just in case I say everything out there, I have a whole thing number one. I'm joking, but
Okay, I saw you writing in there.
I was like writing in my
Right.
And the last thing I think, because I heard this from a friend, and this just like shook me so much, is that at the airport, if I'm a trans man and I go presenting male at the airport, they'll literally tell me to change so I can board my flight, or if I'm coming back, like for me to come back into the country, which I just think is so ridiculous, because if you can, it's just an outfit that I'm wearing.
Right.
I think RuPaul said it once when
What
he was
a
like,
ghost
everyone
clothes.
is dressed in
Right.
drag. Like we all wear drag. Like we're born into this world naked, and then whatever
And then
we
we
put
put
on is
clothes on,
drag.
sure.
Yeah, and I was just like, that's really true. And for me, I think that's such a it's like an aim to like embarrass people.
Right.
Because if I have to tell Jordan, no, go and change and like look differently, it's just a way to make you feel bad about yourself, and it's just petty. It's
Right.
some of these rules seem very petty, and I think these are simple changes that we can start making, because literally it is at no financial cost to the government, and we know how much you care about money, so like it really means nothing financially to them. Like it will not cost them anything to do these things.
Right.
So I think, yeah, because I know things take so long to change in Zimbabwe. So I think in the next 15 years, those three things is really just like asking for the bare minimum.
Right, right. I don't know, I always hear other Zimbabweans saying that like there's so many other things we need to worry about. Like there's no water in the hospitals. Like this is a minimal, is that the word? Minimal issue. Like it's very small. It's not something to be worried about. So many more things that we have to act like pressing matters. I don't know. So I think just to stand in solidarity with our fellow Zimbabweans, I think, you know, we're not dying for huge things like a marriage bill, or like, you know, let's start with the small things, like being recognized as human beings, you know, before you can say to us, there's so many other pressing things. You're saying that from the position of someone who is recognized by the government, you know. I'm not recognized by my government. When I go into most spaces, it's a double take where I am being questioned as if I'm committing fraud. You know, it's a thing where I am, oh, you don't match, right? That happens all the time, more than you know. And it's a thing that happens, and I think that's something I don't think needs to happen. It's unnecessary. I think being recognized as valid, being validated by our government, by our constitution,
Definitely.
which is for all people of the Zimbabwean country, all Zimbabwean people. I don't feel represented by my constitution. So I think that's what I would say. I would love to see in the next 10 to 15 years, which is even a stretch, it should be like next year, girl. Next year, you know, it needs to be something that we are talking about where we're engaging and involving people of the LGBTQIA plus community in these conversations,
Right.
making you an equal part of society. Let's start there.
So it's interesting, your answers both focused very much on government.
Yes.
Right.
Because they're the policy makers.
Right.
I think a lot of things like come down from a position of, like, it's a hierarchy. So like things come down from the top. So for example, even sometimes when you like you mentioned how our previous president was very homophobic and things like that. So a lot of the things he would say, then you have people in the rural areas who are also like, yeah, but he says we're not gays, so yes, we're not gays. But like when outreaches are done in the rural areas, there's a completely different narrative where they're like, nah, the boy from that farm, the girl from the other farm, we know that this is what they do, and like we're fine with it. Like we don't even care. But because people were kind of preconditioned into thinking this way because this is what the government kind of pounds into them every single day. And because it's made into such a big thing. So I feel like policies have to start from the top. And then once our laws and our constitution changes, then we can start training, healthcare workers, our police. We can start training, our ministers, our teachers. We can start training, children, parents, families, and things like that. And then it just keeps coming down until it gets to the, grassroots level. And then everyone is thinking differently and we have this change that happens.
But things can go up from the grassroots as well. Right. It's true that policies come down, but some of these changes happen because, and again, often it's a generational change. When the next generation, however you define that, feels the way you just said, it's like, it's no big deal. Yeah, okay, they're married, so what? Yeah. Well, then that influences the government because that becomes the majority view. So it can go that way as well.
True, I guess. But in Zimbabwe, I just feel like it's...
Right, I don't know. They teach the kids to be oppressive as well, so... Teach your kids better, guys. Right, I don't know. It carries on.
I'm afraid we're short on time. Do you have any last words for your viewers? Any last words of encouragement or wisdom?
I don't know. I think something that I always say is be yourself in whatever that looks like. As long as you're not harming the next person, I think that you're valid in your identity. I think we have to always remember that as long as you're not harming anyone, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
As long as it's two consenting adults, it's none of your business. As long as we are, the message is love, as long as we're just like ensuring that everyone has access, equal access, maybe not. I always say that equality is an illusion. I don't think that I don't wanna dampen anyone's, this is just my opinion, don't come for me in the comments. But I just believe that equality is one of those things that we work towards. Maybe it's an unattainable goal, but it's something that gives hope. So I think we can remain hopeful in believing that one day we will see a better world where people can exist freely without having to discuss or debate the validity of their existences, So for me, I just think my words of encouragement are just continue to exist, continue to take up space, continue to be yourself in whatever that looks like I said. And just be a beautiful person, guys. Stop hating, stop, being trash people who want...
Don't be so angry.
Right, who want to dictate what other people are doing. Don't be that person, don't be that guy, don't be that girl, don't be that in-between person, Just live your life, mind your own business, and go about your day, Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I'll just piggyback off what Jordan said, and just kindness can take you a long way, guys. And I'm not saying that you have to be best friends with everyone and like buy everyone drinks in the bar. No, I'm just saying that
you can buy me a drink.
You can just be nice, just showing someone like general kindness and minding your own damn business. It's also like a great thing to do. Because I think just being kind to one another, minding your own business, and just treating everyone the same, treating people like they're humans, because you would want the same treatment yourself. So just do the same thing, and let's advocate for some changes to happen in our policies because we're done with this.
All right. So be beautiful people and mind your own damn business.
Can I add something? Oh my gosh, can I add something? I feel like it's important because Pride Month is not just Pride Month. I think Pride is something we should celebrate every single day.
Yes.
It's not something that should be limited to 1 month. Or in Zimbabwe, we celebrate Pride in October, actually, when the jacarandas bloom. So Pride Month shouldn't be restricted to one place, one context. It should always be spread out. We should always be celebrating people who are marginalized, oppressed, people who don't have access to the same opportunities that everyone else does. It should not just be a one-time thing. And if you're only celebrating Pride in June, you need to think hard.
All right. Well, thank you again, Jordan and Vera, for joining us at the U.S. Embassy, for allowing us to turn the tables on the UK
Right.
arrangement here for this Her Hour takeover for Pride Month 2021. We thank you for the work that you do facilitating conversations like this, and for the work that you do to support human rights. The US government supports you in that work. We believe that LGBTI rights are human rights, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And we support anyone who is supporting human rights in any country in the world. So thank you again. It's been a
That
privilege
part.
for me
Right.
to be part of your show today.
Thank you so much.
for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much for coming
was
on.
great.
What an honor. What an amazing guest you've been.
you.
Host.
Have you been a guest? What an amazing host. What an
Yes.
amazing guest I've been. Thank you guys. What an amazing host you've been. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
Thank you.
Great.
And thank you, Vera.
Yes, thank you, Jordan.
Right.
Great.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone behind the scenes. We have a whole crew, guys. I'm joking.
Yes.
Right.
We
There's
have-
like
we have
100 people
here that
unmasked.
are
I'm joking.
cheering,
I'm joking.
cheering for us. So yeah,
Right.
thank you.
Stay safe. Wear your masks. Get vaccinated if you can. If you have access to that, let's remember that there are people who are being denied vaccines. So if you have access to them, make sure that you take advantage of that, because science is the future. You know, we must encourage each other to take advantage of our healthcare, you know. Let's end COVID-19, guys. We want to go out and have cake and go to the movies. Come on. Go and get vaccinated.
Yes, definitely. So don't forget to like our page, subscribe. You can follow the embassy on Twitter.
Follow the embassy
Yes.
on Twitter, the US
Yes,
Embassy at Harare.
exactly.
Yes.
And yes, keep in touch. Let's keep the conversation going.
Right.
And yes, we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Kisses.
Lights flash, click.
Tick, striker, pose.
Oh, swag, drippy, drippy, click, strike up, pose.